Millions of files, thousands of names, and somewhere in the middle of it all, survivors like me who were called liars 30 years ago are sitting in silence, wondering why the world is only outraged now. Today, we're not staying silent. Two survivors, raw, unfiltered, saying what a lot of people might be feeling, but I have not heard anyone say this out loud. What happens when justice finally comes for some survivors, but the world still does not know your name? Welcome to Arise and Shine podcast. My name is Sharri Burgraff, and I'm an overcomer of ritual abuse, mind control, and childhood trafficking. And with me today is my friend Samara. Samara, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
It's great having you again. So, millions of Epstein files have been released. Survivors are now being believed, compensated, acknowledged, and I in no way want to make this clear. I in no way in this episode am discounting the horrific and extreme things that have happened to these survivors. But there is something that I want to talk about today, and I'm so glad that Samara is here that we can talk about these things. For those of us who were abused during the MK Ultra and Operation Paperclip era, who survived not only the satanic panic, but the false memory syndrome, I felt like all of us back then were being systematically destroyed. Our credibility, something unexpected might be happening to other people because it was happening to me when the Epstein files came out. And I'm glad, absolutely thrilled for the survivors that they stood in that congressional hearing and they were acknowledged. And then I find out that they were compensated. Many of them had to sue, but they were compensated. So we are grieving for them, with them. And, but I'm grieving, and thankfully it hasn't taken as long this time, but it brought up a lot of the stuff from back when I started talking, and I wasn't believed. And so the world, while all of us survivors are united, and I don't want to come across as, like this is a dividing thing because it's not. But I was called a liar. I wasn't believed. And we were left to sort out with our own minds. Why aren't we being acknowledged? Like, why have we never been compensated? And no apology from
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah.
So, Samara, like, would you talk about for you, like, what has it been like for you? And tell us more about where you're coming from with this, with the satanic panic, the false memory syndrome, and all that, because you're younger than me. And so, whatever you want to share about this.
Um, let's see. Well, yeah, I came in I was born in 1981, so my exposure was a little later in the process on some of these things 'cause I the way God unfolded things for me, the way things unfolded for me, I didn't end up having to fight a lot of the whole people. I didn't have a whole lot of people calling me a liar, which sounds kind of bizarre. And it wasn't because people didn't believe me. It's because I just knew what I knew and I told what I told, and I didn't give a crap what other people thought. And um, by the time I started remembering things, like I knew what I knew, and mostly the response that I got was blank stares of like, and people would just like check out while I was talking, and then they would say, "Oh yeah, I was struggling with I had this issue with my laundry card the other day or something." Like they just like they would just was too much for them. They didn't know how to respond. Um, so the bulk of the response that I personally experienced was just like blank stares, and then maybe some like, I hear you, but dismissing kind of a comment. But also, I was, I think I was the people I was sharing with were a specific demographic that, I don't know, who knows what the explanation is for that. Um, but with regards to all this stuff coming out, I don't feel like those people really necessarily believed me, though, is the other thing. I didn't feel like they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. They didn't give a response as though they believed me. It wasn't like they were hearing my words and understanding them and trying to put them in some framework. They weren't like processing what I was saying. So it was just like talking to a wall.
Yes.
Whereas, and um a part of me was like, I don't care whether or not these people believe me or whether or not it's too much. Because, as to some degree, like I'm a little, I can feel and appreciate the tension and the paradox with what I'm about to say. Like I can appreciate that, like the stories that I had to share are freaking awful. They're awful, and there is such a thing as like third party traumatization. Like if you're just hearing the stories, it can traumatize you. And so as a
Yeah.
listener, you kind of need to take care of yourself. But as a survivor, there were a few times where people said, I can't listen to this. And I knew that they were doing the right thing for themselves, but on the other hand, there was this other piece of me that was just enraged. It's like, well, good for you. You get to walk away. This is
Yeah.
too much for you. You can walk away. This is my life.
You can't walk
I
away.
can't. I can't. And the only way I could was by dissociation, and I'm not doing that anymore.
Hmm.
So, um, there was that piece. And then there was this other piece of like, all right, all y'all, so you don't, you're kind of blowing me off. I'm like, whatever. I'm just going to keep sharing these stories. And one day you're going to hear more and more and more of these stories. Be like, oh, I know where to put that now. I've heard this before. I've heard these stories before. And I started doing this like 15 years ago. Like, I mean, what was I? It was 44 now. I was in my early 30s when I started just sharing stuff. I'll raise my hand. I was one of those trauma dumper people. Yeah, that was me. I apologize, but at the same time, like, sorry, not sorry, because like, guess what? Now you have a framework for Epstein files. Do you have that GIF I sent you, or that
I
meme?
do. Let me bring it up.
Yeah, because I saw this meme up here and I thought it was so appropriate with all this Epstein stuff coming forward.
It is.
Let's see. It's
So,
like my background. Yeah, veteran conspiracy theorists and normies reading the Epstein files. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, we've been here before. We'll help you out. But
Yeah,
yes, this is absolutely awful stuff. This is awful stuff.
it is.
One thing that Sharri, you and I were talking about before we got on to record here was how the bulk of the stuff that's coming forward is just really limited to like, oh, it's just sex slave stuff. And we're like, really? Like, I have talked, like, I know a survivor of Epstein, and
I
she
do
didn't
too.
just have, it wasn't just sex. Like, it was
No, it was
so
much more.
much, so much other horrific stuff that it's like, if this, get ready, people, like, this stuff here is just scratching the surface,
Yeah, just
because
like,
guess what? Further down the road, we're going to see how this little tiny thing of Epstein, which is really huge, is connected with all sorts of things.
yeah,
All sorts of things. Like once we start seeing like this whole everything's connected business, I'll start to feel that relief of like, okay, now I've got the vomit out. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I love that picture because it's like the veteran is holding the hair while the
yeah.
other one is puking,
Hmm.
and it's like what you said about like, like saying too much at first. I did the same thing, and it's like all of these survivors are coming forward and they need to be heard,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
kind of like those of us who have already come forward, and it's like we're holding their hair while they, like get the stuff
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
You
the
know,
thing is, like, you, I experienced, like, I don't believe you, you're crazy, all the things we were programmed with, and then saying, oh, it's just false memory, satanic panic. So by the time you came along, you're born in 1981, then it's like some of that had, like,
kind of died down.
ki- yeah.
There's still
So,
people who buy that. There's still
yeah, there
people who buy
are.
that garbage.
Every video I put on YouTube that has anything to do with ritual abuse, always it talks about the satanic panic and on that warning, and it's like, get rid of that thing. You know, that
You
it's been
know,
debunked.
and also, you know what? I laugh at it. It's I can understand being irritated by it, and that makes total sense to me because it's like, what the hell? Stop telling me it's a lie. But on the other hand, like there's such a flood of survivors coming forward that it's not going to matter. It's not
No,
going to matter. Nobody's going to laugh. I fart in your general direction. Like nobody's going to care.
right. Because just like now, people are aware this is real.
Yeah.
This,
Yeah.
and you experience like where people listen, sort of. But they didn't respond really.
No, they
It was
didn't.
like, I can't really hear this, type
Yeah.
thing. But now people are like, oh, this is a real thing. At
Yeah.
least the trafficking
Yeah.
portion of it.
Hmm.
You know, s-
I did have someone who it was funny because there's that bit about trafficking, like that word. People think trafficking is just sex, and I had a client as back in Boston years ago, and um someone who worked in the mental health profession, and she works in trauma and dissociation. This is her career in the Boston area. And so she's been part of that process of learning this material about what is dissociation, how do we deal with it. Like that's been her jam. She's been through that whole birth process. And I shared some of my story, which includes like government sponsored mind control and all this other stuff. And I used the word trafficked for myself, and she's like, no, you weren't trafficked. Because in her mind, because I was always in my parents' home, like that was always my base, that meant
mhm.
that I didn't actually be trafficked. But in reality, I actually was. And I
Me
wasn't
too.
the and and the way that they trained me, like I wasn't directed towards sex trafficking. That wasn't my purpose. That wasn't the primary thing. They weaponized me. So my story was more I was trafficked for super soldier stuff. Ugh.
Mhm. I'm
And
sorry.
I've shared, I've listened to some other survivor stories and about how like when they lay the foundation of the programming, they do certain things to like prep you to receive like your mission for them. And we were talking about this the other day where because he said that they did some militarized programming for you, but the
Yeah.
way that they did it is actually flip things to actually direct you to another thing. And that's what they did to me. They did some of that intro layer of sex programming, but then they flipped it in search in another way to actually get me very psychologically motivated to do the militarized ops, the weaponized ops.
So
You
they
know,
weaponized the sex part of the.
Yes. Oh yeah, it's all weaponized. Everything's weaponized. Like the weaponization
Hmm.
at the core is wanting attachment, needing attachment and all this others, all the basic needs of humanity all get weaponized against us. But like my like in my family there are five kids, and we all, used differently and worked. They used us against each other all the time. But one person in my family was heavily sexualized, and the programmers took that sibling and said, "Look at that. You don't want to be like that. That sibling is really bad. You don't want to do that." And I could see like she's being tricked. I could see I was watching as they were doing the sex programming in my sibling, that she was being tricked and she was buying it. It looked to me like she's stupid, she's buying it. That's what they conditioned me to think. And
Right.
so you don't want to end up like her. And so like all this, it gave this push to more and more and more accept what they were wanting me to do. So I'm like
Hmm.
backing away into this very thing that they're wanting me to do. Look here, now we have a great thing over here for you to do in order to not do that. So anytime I would hear like two genres of music that were heavily utilized for me. One is like the lyrical porn stuff, and the other is like the angry white man's music. So there's like the heavy metal and like the rage,
Hmm.
angry stuff, and then like the stuff that's like all this. It's just sex talk, And so
Yeah.
anytime that kind of stuff would get on the radio, I would actually power up and turn in. Like it would pull me into this military mode in order to say no to that, because I hated what they were
Wow.
doing, you know?
That's
And then,
horrible that they weaponized you and your sister against each other
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
to train you even further from being used for sexual
yeah.
exploitation and more towards the super soldier. Whereas with me, it was specifically for me to be used to be exploited sexually. That was the
Mm.
main purpose that they, made money off of me.
Well, that said, to compare my sibling who was trained for that, she's had memories of being trafficked sexually to seal political deals. Whereas when I was trafficked sexually, actually it was to seal, like I had to deal with a whole bunch of false marriages and sexual issues with other foreign dignitaries, political people in power. And for me, in my setup, the sex was actually sealing a deal so that way they could use my militarization parts. So they had trained me for all this militarization parts, and then when they sold me, they would seal the deal with sex, and then the person I'd have sex with could then have access to all of my militarized training. Does that make sense? So that's how
Yeah.
I was trafficked.
Wow. You're actually the first survivor I've heard that's talked about being trafficked specifically for that. I know there's Bryce Taylor and some other people that were used, like with foreign dignitaries or, like the president or, like allegedly. I need to say that. And there's a lot of people that
Because
have come forward.
these memories could be fake. I would like to touch on that more after you, like, when you finish your thought. Finish your thought.
Well, like, there's a lot of people that have said that Trump abused them, and he was very much involved with Epstein. And I just say allegedly because I want to protect people I have on here
Mm.
from any legal civil suits or stalking injunctions. But there's
I
that
just block
too.
that off in the name of Jesus. We just speak against
Yes.
that in the name of Jesus, the God that you would shut all those doors, bring your angel armies to protect and to cover these people.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my finished thought. So what were you going to say, Samara?
Um, yeah, there's just this that's I think that's another piece of what our country is going to go through is like, what does trafficking mean? Does it just mean this little tiny thing of like, oh, we picked up a 16-year-old off the street? Like, that's horrific. Don't get me wrong, that's horrific. But let's step back and say, why did they pick her and not another teen? What, like, was she already trained? Were her parents part of this dissociative system? Like, we don't know
Usually.
these. We don't, yeah, exactly. Like, we don't know these stories yet. They're still making it look like, oh, they're just picking off one little girl who, like, who's almost an adult. Like, most of these stories are very, like, tame. I mean, they're still horrific. Like, these are, I'm not trying to say that this is, I'm saying that they're keeping it into as nice of a package as possible right now. But
They are.
it's gonna get bigger.
They're
We're gonna see more.
they're presenting it, and these survivors, you know, I pray and hope that they haven't had anything more than that, them
Yes,
themselves.
yeah, I hope so, but chances are pretty slim.
Yeah, because the trafficking that they remember and, that they dissociated away to
The
deal with,
layers.
there's there can be physical abuse, there can be sexual abuse, but then there can be the ritual side of it and the cultic criminal network that is intertwined in all of it
Oh yeah.
throughout the
Oh
world.
yeah. Absolutely. 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 Um
I actually had a thought of like, what if there's survivors out there that, okay, so like the false memory syndrome people, this was based on two parents who had been allegedly accused of sexually abusing their daughter. And what if those people that founded the false memory syndrome are the very people that now those other people that they've abused are remembering?
yeah, right? Yeah.
Their daughter, but their daughter, I think their daughter's name is Jennifer. She actually came out with the Darvo concept, like deflecting and accusing, how these abusers do that. And then, like, I can't remember what it stood for. I didn't look at that before. Uh,
Yeah, it's been a
But they
while since
become
I've
the
seen that.
victim
Hmm.
and, they become like offended. Um, because they're being falsely accused. And it's like, no, they're not being falsely accused. They're
Yeah.
just trying to cover it up, which
Yeah.
is what the false memory
And that
syndrome
said,
did.
and all it is not like this for every perpetrator, but there are perpetrators who probably legit don't know that they're doing these things. And so they like these sorts of things coming up may be like, oh, they have to fight their own denial system over themselves for what it is that they're doing, but God knows. God
Yes,
knows
he
that
does.
I'm not trying to say that they shouldn't be held accountable because yeah, those things still happened.
Mm,
Those things still happen. I'm just kind of pointing out like another thread of this, like this could get very, 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 very messy. And another piece of this is like we can sit here and shake our fists at the heavens of like, why aren't heads rolling? Why aren't people being prosecuted? And there's well, we can see obviously there's what the Babylon Bee came up, had an article recently that says, oh, politician on Epstein's list challenges other politician also on Epstein list about being on Epstein's list. It's like,
I wish I had that. Maybe I can find that.
yeah,
Could you
I'll
send it to me and
I'll send it to
I'll
you.
put
I'll
it
send it to you.
in this in
The
this
link to it. Oh
podcast.
my gosh, it's
Yeah.
freaking hilarious. It's like, of course they're like Joe Schmo, who's an offender on the list, is trying to say to somebody else, Jane Schmo, who's also on the list, like, how come you on that list? Did you do anything? It's like, Do I accuse you too? Like, what? Like, you were at the party too? Like, party? Like, what do we do here?
Yeah.
You know, the way that Babylon Bee article ends is just,
Yeah. I love their stuff.
yeah. So, but also like in light of that, it's like if we start wrapping everybody up, we won't have a government.
Right.
We won't have a government, like down to like the eighth tier or something like that. Like
Yeah.
so many people will be locked up. There will be a huge vacuum of power, and we the people need to be ready to step into that.
Yeah, and who's going to fill those spots
Yeah, who's going to
if
fill those
all of them
spots?
are,
Yeah,
and
because
there's so
and
many that are connected to
we
this.
do we do they all need to be dealt with for true
Hmm.
justice. And I think we also talked about how, like, okay, these women are actually kind of starting to be heard a little bit. They actually get to speak their testimony in Congress, and they are getting some financial reparations. But like, really, what? Like, you're paying me again?
It doesn't make up for anything
Like,
that has
really?
happened to
It
them.
doesn't, like, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't heal anything, you know? And it's like, yeah, you paid me $50 for the last time I did your job. Like, okay.
Right. And I got to
If
be
it's
honest, the 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 survivors like me that are out there, and if you are watching this and you can relate, like as you saw
never
that the
actually did get
survivors,
paid.
yeah, but as you watch this play out, like you weren't believed like me. There was the false memory, the satanic panic, all that to cover it all up. And but if you had any rage or anger as these survivors came forward, I want you to hear this, that that's a normal emotion
Yeah,
because of what
yeah,
we weren't given. And so I
yeah,
want to speak to the survivors like me who,
yeah.
if you had any feelings, I'll share mine just real quickly. I felt anger when I started to hear, I was just like, oh my gosh, all of these survivors that are coming forward, my heart just ached for them. And I was so angry for what happened to each of them. And then as I saw Pam Bondi fail to apologize to them in that congressional hearing when the representative specifically asked her to, and she was very specific for the Department of Justice failing them because their names were not redacted and they were exposed. Their names and their information about people. I mean, they didn't necessarily even tell anyone about this. And
Yeah.
so they weren't given that privacy. They were exposed. And so then also the names that were redacted were
Mhm.
there was definitely protecting the billion-dollar abusers. And so those names were covered up. So I want
Mhm.
to apologize on behalf of our government and the Department of
Yeah.
Justice for doing that to them, to whoever is listening, for doing that to you. And because I was enraged with you when Pamela Bondi sat there and she just said, well, why don't you ask that question to the former attorney general? She didn't even apologize to them. And so I went through feeling so angry at what was done to all of these Epstein survivors. And then I started hearing their stories. And if you're like me, this is normal. I want to normalize it. I started to feel angry when I heard that they were paid for doing massage because I was never paid. I had to give my money, because I'm from Iowa, I had to hand the money to the abusers, and I had to say each time, I owe a debt I can never repay. And I'm giving them the money that they made off of me and being made to internalize it all. So I had anger. I felt angry just a day or two of why didn't I get paid? I never got paid. And so then when I found out they got compensated with the Epstein compensation fund, and then some people were able to sue this Epstein foundation or whatever it is, and they got compensated. It's like, okay, these survivors are getting compensated, they're getting acknowledged. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you have had feelings about that too, that's what I want to say here too, is that that's okay to have those feelings, because even though, it's otherwise we get stuck in that grieving process. Like,
Yeah.
have the anger, have the rage, have the
Absolutely.
outrage, because the injustices were done to all of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
It is not okay what was done to me or to Samara or to any survivor out there. None of it was okay, ever.
Yeah. I never got month paid either. I never went through my hands. That was just the package on the conveyor belt at the cashier, like,
And none of it's
you
okay.
know. Yeah.
Not for
But
you, not for me.
I also want to say to those of you who have been speaking out and you didn't get the microphone, you didn't get the platform, you didn't get the acknowledgement, like, every single ounce of your vocalizing no and your vocalizing your story, every single ounce of it is part of the big push that is happening now, and we're finally starting to see all these voices collecting to break the seal, kind of like a and the image that comes to mind is a Horton Hears a Who, that Dr. Seuss story. We are here. We are here. Finally, that one extra voice starts to break it out, and then other people can start to hear it. And
Hmm.
we're finally seeing the seal start to break.
Yes.
Um,
And I
it'll
think it's important that we
compound.
unite and
Yeah.
that we don't let any of this divide us, because as survivors, we have so much in common. What was done to all of us was wrong. It was criminal, not just
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these people, I mean, it looks like Trump and other people in power are getting away with it. But I saw
Looks like
Trump
it.
the other day when he was doing the State of the Nation address, or whatever it's called, congressional thing. Uh,
Yeah.
he looked to me like he's feigning like dementia type stuff. And I didn't think this, but my husband Frank, he thought this. Because all of a sudden now it's coming out more and more that Trump actually has been very much a big part of this. And so anyway, Frank said he's trying to make a way so that he doesn't have to be accountable, and he's trying to look like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm so helpless now because I'm having dementia or whatever it is he's
Yeah.
doing.
It's that same pride comes before the fall.
Yeah.
Certainly had a lot of that,
But it's not looking good for
and
him or for any of the other
no,
people
no, no,
that were involved and
no.
are in power.
Yeah, and there'll be all these gruesome details to hash out as to, like, who was just talked about versus who was involved. Because, like, just because their names are mentioned doesn't mean there's truth to that, and we'll just have to sort all this out, because that's what people are gonna throw out there, like, oh, just because my name is there doesn't, like, we'll see, we'll see,
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll see. And then we'll see just how much of this other stuff, like how much of the torture and the ritual stuff is gonna come forward. Because we only have
Hmm.
half the files released, as I understand it, right?
Yeah,
That's only half of them.
they're
3 million
the
is only half
ones
of them.
the ones that were released. This is just like a gate opening.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not a
It's like,
conclusion at all.
they've spent all this time to pick which 3 million. They've picked the safest 3 million.
They have.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
So
have.
but whatever, it's preparing the rest of the country. They'll get their vomits out and start to like
Yeah.
get oriented. Those who have been in denial, and more
And
survivors are going to
God
be like,
knows.
oh, okay, it's okay to acknowledge this and start trusting that what's in themselves more,
Hmm.
And in the meantime, we have to the we can definitely get caught up in, so like, it's so emotional, like all this is so intense, we want to see heads roll right away, but at the same time, like, because this is so big,
Hmm.
the true justice and the true relief of it all won't really come until we also at the same time have to raise up people to take care of all these people.
Yes.
Because, like, guess what? Churches aren't doing jack to help
Oh,
survivors. They're
the
not doing
churches have
anything.
failed
Churches
us.
have failed miserably. At best, they just don't do anything. At worst, they're working in tandem.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like the spectrum is either they just don't want to look at it or they're part of the problem. Like straight up hardcore part of the problem,
Yes.
and
And
everything in between. Like, and there are a few who are like kind of trying to dabble in this, but there's that whole section, that's this whole other sector of exposures that is happening. Like all these churches and church leaders, these prominent Christian people leaders are being pulled forward, and they're the same exposure thing is going
mhm.
on that end too, while we're pulling up all this stuff over here, and we're just starting to we're pulling heads out of the sand, and we just see the hair on these different heads over here, you
Yeah,
know
the Catholic Church was big in this, and then a lot of that has been exposed over the years. And then
Yep.
the LDS Church in Utah is a multi-billion-dollar business. It's not even a church, and
Jesuits are
there's
huge into Jesuits are huge into this
mhm,
too.
there's so many survivors coming forward from the LDS Church, just by itself, and then just all these
Yeah.
other things. But I had a question this morning, like on my mind. It's like, if the church is the body of Christ, why did so many of survivors find him anywhere but there? Just like
Yeah,
you and I
right.
were talking.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to touch on that, because you and I both got ministry from Fern and Audrey with Discovering Mercy.
Mhm.
Thank God for them.
Yeah.
And then you've mentioned the like Dan Duvall Bride Ministries.
Bride
You want to talk
Ministries. Yep.
a little bit more about what they have to offer, because these survivors need something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, like I absolutely totally appreciate and value and treasure all the things and the tools that I got from hmm, Fern and Audrey. That's their screen name. Oh my. I like, they gave me really, really powerful tools. I will say, like, the process God has taken me, he's like, I feel like a monkey swinging through the trees in the jungle. And like each tree I swing to, God gives me different tools to work through. Um, d- um, Discovering Mercy was a huge toolbox where I got a lot of tools from. Another place that I got tools from was Elijah House Ministries. Now that these people, I would definitely, again, as like kind of building blocks, there kind of like entry level, and I believe every Christian, every believer should take a chunk off of this. And there are other ministries that do kind of the same thing, but it's basic, like learning how to do heart hygiene before, as a believer, learning how to do heart hygiene as a believer, learning how to deal with, what do I do when somebody hurts me, how do I forgive, what do I release, some basic tools on dealing with problems in your heart. And I needed that foundation, and coupled that along with the tools that I got from Discovering Mercy, where they got really much more detailed into like dealing with the dissociation, dealing with severe trauma, and putting whole pictures together, and also again, going along with false memory, what do you do when programmers put in specific false memories, and how do you process that? Like, and I think we've talked about this, like if you have a broken toe and you fix your elbow, your toe isn't going to get healed and nothing's going to happen to your elbow. So if your
Right.
elbow is a false memory, there's nothing that happened there. Your elbow didn't get broken. It's your toe. So there's the fruit, the proof is in the pudding. The fruit that comes of the ministry will verify that was real and this was false. But all the time, like the false memories that were put into us, that are implanted, are part of a bigger picture of really nasty garbage. And guess what? If you get like some of the bigger picture stuff is actually way crazier than what a lot of people really want to deal with. And Bride Ministries and Dan Duvall really dives in. He's like, tell me all your weird stuff. I'm gonna figure out, just tell me the weird stuff and I'll ask God how I can pray for you. It's basically like, I'll just bushwhack this with like, you've got abducted by aliens. All right, let's talk about this and unpack the whole package, you know. So
Yeah.
he goes into some really crazy stuff, and like stuff that super soldiers end up doing is like off the charts wacko. But I'm saying wacko in the sense that like I myself have had to be like, is this real? And then like I can feel in my body being like, yes. I can
Hmm.
feel that witness and these parts saying like, oh my gosh, thank you for naming this, because now I can get free of it. And that's
Yeah.
something that I definitely encourage, you know, like it, we all, so many of us have had memories of being raped by Jesus. Was it actually Jesus? Yes and no. Yes, to the extent that like now all your belief system is based off of that, but no, in the sense of that, absolutely not. You're only going to get partial. You're only going to get partial freedom if you believe the false memory. You have to step back and look at the bigger picture and be like, oh, that's where that fits.
Yeah.
You
That
know?
that false memory that they do to all of us is
Yeah.
to pose as Jesus, and a man is actually doing
Yeah.
the raping.
Yes.
But
Yes. You were actually raped. And the thing is, like, when I say yes and no, I do not mean that it was not actually Jesus. It was false Jesus. I want to be very
yeah,
clear about that. True
yeah.
Jesus does not do that.
No, he doesn't.
True Jesus does not do that. But if you have, coming from like a severe dissociative system, was like, okay, like I grew up my whole life, I thought I was a great Christian, blah 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 blah, and then memories start coming, like, oh, I was raped, but no, that couldn't be real. A part comes forward and starts saying I was raped by Jesus, and that's why I don't want you to go to church anymore. So that's what I mean about how we have to approach these things, is like
Yes.
recognize that like this part of you had a real experience, but it was very constricted. And so and the beliefs that came from that are need to be dealt with appropriately. But if you just say no no no, that couldn't be possible, you're actually encouraging the dissociative split. You're
Yes.
actually working in tandem with what the bad guys wanted to keep you away from the memory.
And sometimes they do stuff like having somebody dress up like Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse,
Yes,
and then
exactly.
raping a person so that when the
Same
child
thing.
says something,
It
like
was
they
Mickey
believe
Mouse.
it,
Like, that was a bad
that
dream, kid.
other people aren't going to believe it. Yeah, a
Mm-mm.
lot of times
Yes,
they
and
said everything was a
they
dream.
work very, 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 very hard. So much of the programming that they do centers around um, enforcing denial, getting disbelief, not remembering, all this stuff. So amnesic walls, so much programming goes into making that happen.
Yes.
You know, they
And
work really hard. They work really hard, which kind of gives you an idea. Like they have to work pretty stinking hard to try to
yeah,
make it, try to cover their tracks. And it's like, actually, what God says is true. What's in the dark will be revealed.
Yes.
you
Amen
know.
to that. And the thing is, they do a lot of stuff, mock things, and then the programming to cover up what's really going on. And that
Mhm.
is satanic ritual abuse. And they are doing things to sacrifice children, and
Mhm.
they are doing things to um, make the person believe that they are as evil as their perpetrators, and even to the point of having to harm
Yeah,
other children and
yeah,
other babies. And so
yeah.
I do want to put a shout out there for any survivors of satanic ritual abuse who were told the wrong things and shown the wrong things about Jesus and God. And that is a friend of mine, Anita Anderson, wrote this book, The Lion
Mm,
Who Was Always There, and
mm,
it's specifically for survivors of ritual abuse who have DID. And
mm,
she found that she needed to use a different name. And God,
mm,
the Holy Spirit, gave her the name, the Lion of Judah. And so
mm,
this book is reclaiming uh, your right to have a way to connect with God and to bypass the conditioning
mhm.
and the programming that uses the names that are so weaponized.
Yeah,
And so you can get it on
yeah,
Amazon. I highly recommend it. I will
yeah,
put the resources that Samara and I talked about today in the description. Uh, the Bride Ministries, Fern and Audrey, Elijah House, and
mhm.
then the Babylon Bee thing that Samara
Yeah.
talked about. I will I will make sure I put that on the video before I upload it to YouTube. But there are people that are like us that are needing to be trained to know how to work with all these survivors. And Bride Ministries has an online journey,
Oh,
uh,
yes, that.
and
Mhm.
Fern and Audrey, they no longer go by Discovering Mercy, but they have a course that Samara and I both were given to go through. It was a 2-year course. Uh, it was a foundational counseling course,
Yeah.
and they also have one, I think it's called Hidden in Me, or Me Hidden in Protection, or something like that. I'll find out, but I'll put all of those
Yeah, I can't remember what the
resources.
names of their courses were. As I remember when I took it, it was like I was like the beta test group. It was like they had like two people run through it, and then I was like the next round of people testing the course out. And yeah, you do bring up a good point that we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but it's sort of like, okay, I realize I've got I check off some of these symptoms here that looks like I might be a candidate for this kind of a history. What do I do now? Like there's a whole lot of um there's a whole lot of learning that will be very, very helpful for people who are just uh either questioning if they have these sorts of memories, or heavily suspicious but don't really know what to do. There are a whole lot of things that um just just learning about it will be really helpful to start breaking things free. And so like jumping right into counseling might not necessarily be the best thing to do, but learning some stuff about what the heck is going on in my brain, what the heck is going on in my body, kind of a thing. And those courses in the Vernon Audrey's course gives a good like foundational understanding of like, okay, give you some basic orienting tools, because so often as survivors, like we've been through so much stuff, we have no clue how to do some basic human things like, what do I do if I'm sad? What do I do if I'm mad? Just what if I'm upset or frustrated at Starbucks because they didn't give me the right, like, we don't know how to manage our emotions at all. And so these courses, it can really help to give you some like basic entry level tools to get you ready to really look deeper at stuff. And there are so many people who come from such dysfunctional families. I think it's just a great idea. Like whether or not you think you have this kind of this kind of a history, just jump in and like, because these are basic human tools. Same thing with Elijah House Ministries. Like I feel like they're very basic. Like learn how to be a believer, a basic. Like what's the daily hygiene? How do you stay healthy? How do you learn how to take care of yourself? Kind of a thing. And Bride Ministries, their strength is spiritual deliverance. So they get real deep into the spirit realm and how the variety of demonic tactics. I'll just use demonic as a blanket word because we're mostly familiar with that.
Yeah.
The different tactics that not God spiritual entities and not God entities use to trick us and enslave survivors. And so they dive real deep into that. And depending on where you're at in your process, because going through things with Fern and Audrey's route, there's a measure of emotional capacity that you kind of need to get started there. Whereas if you're struggling with that, getting some deliverance might actually help to break some stuff off to get you able to do that stuff. And so it might work either way. You might want to start in one place or another. Like I don't feel like either of them feel like they complement each other. They don't box each other out. They both have their strengths. So
Yes.
I always appreciate seeing just the variety. I mean, basically what we're looking at is like God equips and designs specific people for specific jobs out there. And guess what? We all have to work together. It's not all in one
Yeah.
place, you know?
Right. And it's
So
like a process, like for me, it's been a process like God's took me through like, years of therapy and then, connecting with Fern and Audrey of
Mhm.
Discovering Mercy. And then I had deliverance through Four Corners Free ministry with Andrea and Dan. And then also Living Heart Ministries. I have ongoing prayer ministry with a wonderful lady named Liv. And then there's other like Restoration in Christ Ministries.
Mhm.
So Fern and Audrey, like
This
they gave us some really solid
Mhm.
basic stuff. And it was like a building block to the next thing, and then
Yeah,
we do need
yeah,
deliverance from the demonic stuff.
yeah,
And all those resources are out there. So as the world processes the Epstein files and the flood of survivors coming forward, I do want to say that the networks that abused Epstein's victims are not isolated and they are connected to the same cultic ritual and
yeah,
trafficking networks that survivors like Samara and I have been describing for decades. And the world's outrage is welcome, but
yeah,
it needs
yeah.
to go deeper. So,
Yep, we gotta go deeper.
what we want the world to know, this is not over and it's not limited to one man's island. And we want all
Yeah,
the survivors to know that we believe that your stories are just as real as ours. And we want pastors and clinicians and
mhm.
advocates and support people, everyday parents, to educate themselves about ritual abuse and trauma based mind control. And you can find a lot of information on my website, ariseandshineafterabuse.com. And then there's also Relentless Hope for You. And they have tons of resources on their website, and it's relentlesshopeforyou.org. I want all the survivors to hear this. Any survivors that maybe are still feeling silenced, still not feeling like they're fully believed, wondering if you imagined it, to know that you did not imagine it.
Yeah,
We see you, we believe you, and you're not alone. And any survivor who wants to come on this podcast, I welcome you to do so. Just contact me. You can make a comment in my YouTube channel here. And we are not conspiracy theorists. We are not, and never have been, like gotten into satanic panic or we don't have false memories. And we are not confused. We are survivors, and we do unite with all of you. No
Yeah.
division. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for
Yeah.
being here, Samara.
I
Anything
add
you
a
want to say,
yeah.
please?
Yeah, on that note with another thing about the Epstein thing is that it looks like, oh, this is just civilian. I'm waiting for these sorts of stories to crop up that are like very clearly government sponsored. 'Cause that's what I was. Mine was all military.
Mhm.
Mine was all like on Air Force bases. Like it's a whole different network, but it's all kind of the same thing. They're all interconnected, but we're gonna like
Mhm.
this gut it up. And this is like we'll the our country will need to be ready to replace our government for my sector of this abuse to come forward with the military stuff.
Mhm.
But it'll come. I believe it'll come.
Yes.
I believe
Yes.
it'll come. There's too much momentum and too many people are realizing like, oh geez.
Yeah.
I think now all the Trumpers and MAGA people are starting to realize, wait, what? There were some things that all the lefties that we hated were saying that we actually should have listened to.
Yeah.
You know,
And this isn't a left or right thing.
Mm-mm.
It's
Good versus evil.
yes, it is. And we know as believers who already won the victory, Jesus Christ. And we can overcome all of this because we don't need to be overcome by it, but we are overcomers. And there's a lot to say about the multi-generational stuff, like Samara mentioned, like being trafficked, like from a home base. It's not like you're taken away and and then there's all the bloodline stuff, but
Well,
maybe we
I
can,
still resided at my home. It wasn't like I was
right,
ripped
same
away from my
here.
family and orphaned, in like
Yes.
not in the traditional sense you think of, like the what's the
Like
what's that movie that came out?
abducted.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that story of that came out, or that movie that came out a few years ago, the Freedom
Oh, Sound of
Sound
Freedom.
of Freedom. Yes, Sound of Freedom, where it was like, okay, a little girl was abducted from her home. Like that's
Yeah,
what people think of as trafficking. It's like there's a nice regular home and then somebody comes in and takes a person away from their home, and that's trafficking. It's
right,
like actually their networks can be so homegrown that it's like the whole community is in on it, so you don't have to leave your home. You don't have
right.
to leave your residence.
So with the Epstein survivors, like Ghislaine Maxwell was big on recruiting these women, like that are 14, 16, underage, and like getting them to give Jeffrey a massage, like his masseuse was unavailable, and then they get paid to do this, and then they get groomed into the trafficking world. Well, like for us survivors, it's like we were born into this stuff,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and and
yeah,
then like it's a multi-generational thing, so there are some differences in it. It's like we can believe each survivor, but it's important for people to know the differences between like going somewhere and getting a job or having a boyfriend, start trafficking you at a teenage years when, this is done. We had childhood trafficking. And so, there
yeah.
are some differences, but we're all survivors of the same evil, that touched us. So I want to leave all the listeners with the hope that there is through Jesus Christ. And Samara and I and many other survivors have found hope, healing, recovery, deliverance, restoration in our lives. I can honestly say that Samara and I, we have the effects of what has happened to us, but we live. We do more than just survive, and
Yeah. Oh, yes.
it's
Yeah.
it's wonderful how God takes us from the ashes and brings beauty into our lives, and there is hope.
Yeah.
Thank you, Samara, for joining us
Thank
today
you.
again. And thank you to all the listeners, the survivors. Like and subscribe and comment. We really want to hear from you. And we want to remind you again that this is a Rise and Shine podcast. Thank you for listening today.